Hey guys, welcome back to my channel. In today's video we are going to do one on sphagnum moss. An interesting topic, and everybody asked me about growing it, and yeah, it's an interesting topic. I like it. But I wanted to apologize for last week. I was really sick and I had no voice, and even today I am going to take a Halls. So if you hear something rattling around in my mouth, it is one of those extra strength Halls. And anyways, we're going to start this video outside, but then we'll end up in the greenhouse. It is cold out, it is winter. It's nice and sunny, as you can see. But yeah, check this out. The pond is frozen. I'm still in shorts, but I probably shouldn't be. Now I just wanted to take you up here first, give you a little tour. I'll show you how I grow my sphagnum moss. Hopefully I'm saying that correctly. Sphagnum. Anyways, people always get irritated when I say it wrong. So these are my colonies, and they are basically frozen solid right now. So that's okay. They don't look overly great because they're frozen solid. This one here, this all turned up. This is when it's just starting to regrow. When sphagnum is nice and not frozen. That's funny. You can knock on it. When it's not frozen, it's growing on the top but dead on the bottom. Excuse me, I'm going to cough a few times probably. But all the dead stuff on the bottom will regrow anyways, just not in January. So yeah, this is what they look like. And there's some spots where I've like pooched them, and this will all grow back. You can already see like little tips growing back. But this is on there so the birds don't get in. And this is basically what it looks like. This one's really dry. And then these guys in the summer I just put in a shaded area and make sure they don't dry out. So they're really simple. There's holes in here about half a centimeter up, so they hold a little bit of water. Sphagnum, you can't overwater it as long as it's draining out. It can be quite wet, but you don't want it sitting like underwater. Alright, so let's take a walk down to the greenhouse there, which is all bubble wrapped up for the winter time. Oh, I can't wait for winter to be over. Another week or so and we're back to 10 hours of light, and then I am in business again because my plants start to grow again. Not that they actually didn't grow this winter, but so let's just go in here, and it's really messy in here because it's winter time. But yeah, let's have a look at the sphagnum moss here growing in pots. So the trick is not how we keep it alive outside, because you can see it can be like frozen. We just don't want it to dry out there in the summertime. That's the main problem with it outside. But it looks good in here as well. So the first thing we need to realize is there is different kinds of sphagnum moss. Some has red heads, some has green heads, some has little gold, I don't know, the pieces turn gold around the edges after a while. There's some up there that's kind of goldy. So there's all different kinds, and not all kinds grow easily for me. Some kinds grow easier than others, and I'm just looking for a kind that doesn't grow very well. I try not to keep much of it. This is a half a colony here. So I'm not getting into Latin names of sphagnum. If you Google sphagnum moss identification, you will come up with ways to identify it. I'm not going to bother with that. So this is the big kind. This is a kind that we actually use in our mosses and in our Nepenthe pots and sorry, in our orchid pots and stuff like that. And this stuff just does not grow inside for me, hardly at all. It hates it in the summertime. It always dies. It does not like the heat at all. So this stuff outside grows great. I can grow this in with my Sarracenias really easily, but I found out the hard way that it doesn't grow good inside the greenhouse. So even though this looks nice and lush right now, this stuff wouldn't grow, wouldn't survive the summertime. And it's too bad because it's really big, and it doesn't take many heads to fill a pot up. Now in some of my other videos, when we were just sort of getting moss started, I'm going to leave that right there. I might still use this one as a demo because it's huge. When we were just getting moss started and you didn't have much of it, I said to get one pot sort of going like this, and then just sort of prick out some of the heads of the pots that are doing well, and replant the heads in the pots. And it does work. It's long and tedious, but it does eventually get you there. But what I have found since that point is really it's better to, now I said in the beginning of the video that only the top is alive, so there's a good example of the top being alive and the bottom being dead. This is the one that I don't like very much, but it makes a good example. So I was only using the top half or the top quarter of it. Now I like to plant it like right down deep if I can, so that the actual moss itself becomes a wick. So if the top of your pot dries, it's still kind of getting moisture from inside the pot, which makes it much easier to keep nice and green. The other thing I was always told was just, and I'm going to go back down here, throw your moss on top of the pot and it will just start to grow for you. So I have tried that and it doesn't work very well. I end up with something like this. A bunch of dead sides and some that's starting to grow again, but it takes a while. Now if you can keep the moss oriented, or as you're about to use it, sort through it and make sure all the heads are facing up. Grab a little bunch like that. It's great when it's kind of undisturbed and I can pluck out a bunch like this. And then I can just plant it just like that. So, being that it comes from outside, it has all kinds of leaves and pine needles in, but doesn't bug anything, and I try to clean it out as much as I can. But yeah, so now I would take that, and unfortunately I didn't bring a tripod with me, but I would plant it like this. I would get it all organized, plant it like that, maybe loop this one up, or cut that big long one off because it's kind of annoying. But plant it all, and you would literally just, I would make a hole in the pot. I'm going to do this one-handed in my Edwardsiana pot here. Make a little hole in there with your finger, and tuck the whole thing in, and push it down deep. And you know what else works really well for that? And I have one right here, is the end of a pencil, the eraser end, because it grips a little bit. Then you can just sort of stick it in and tuck it in like that, and then the heads grow upwards. You have a nice little bit down into the pot, an inch or so, and it will wick the water up a little bit more. So hopefully you guys seen that. I can try to do it again one-handed. Let me just grab some more moss. I'm reaching for some more moss here. Hopefully I can get some. Okay. So I'm going to leave this pretty much undisturbed. Again, excuse the pine needles and stuff that are in it from outside, but I like to have it oriented so that it's all the same. And yeah, I don't know who told me to just lay it across the surface and it'll grow, but I didn't like that idea at all. So let's do this again. I wasn't really planning on doing an example. This is an old crappy moss that's in here, so we can remove a bit of that and see how it just comes right out. And I'm going to use my finger just to go down a little bit, create a little hole. And then this new moss can just be slid right in like so. And I could even get like a little bit more because that hole is still there. So let's get a little bit more. Let's see if we can find. This one here looks like a red colored moss. Red is really hard to come by, at least for me. It doesn't grow as fast, and the heads are much smaller. So I'm going to keep it organized and orientated like that. And use my finger to put it in the hole that I already made there. And slide it just right down. And again, you can use a pencil if you want to tuck it in there. But yeah, that way the moss heads are like kind of going down the pot like this, and they're able to pull some moisture from down deeper, as opposed to just laying it just on top. So that's kind of how I plant it, and it goes nuts and it kind of falls over itself, and yeah, some of it goes really red under light, and others goes kind of orange under light, and others stays totally green. The majority of it stays totally green under lights. So that's sort of how I'm planting the moss. The other things I do is, this is just like literally laying on the plastic vinyl. There's nothing there, and it's growing so much. It's like falling over itself and all that kind of cool stuff. I'm going to go over here to the hamadas. Hopefully you guys can still hear me because I just pulled on the mic cord. So these are the hamadas here. Now this doesn't get a whole lot of light, so it grows a little bit more spindly. But as you can see, it's just sitting on the plastic. And I water it often. I do not want this to dry out at all. So the water down here does wick up to the top. But on hot sunny days, I do lots of shallow watering. I don't necessarily want my pots to always be soaking wet, but I need the heads of the moss to stay wet. So if they're not getting it enough from the bottom, it needs to be just sort of sprayed. So at the end of the day, I usually go through here, and with the garden hose, which is not really a garden hose because it's in here, it has hot and cold blend. So I just spray this with like room temperature water, and I not necessarily watering the plants, I'm just kind of watering here, and then I'll come down and water in there and spray down there, and then go and spray over there, and I just sort of give everything a quick wetting. There's lots of air movement in here. Nothing ever stays wet for too long. So yeah, you just don't want it to dry out. If it starts to dry out, like this one here was drying out a little bit, so I moved it. It won't stay dried out for very long and be happy. So we want to make sure it doesn't do that. That's a sign that it's not getting enough moisture. But when it's planted really thin like this, it's really hard to keep moist. When it's planted thicker like this, it's so much easier. So once you have the sphagnum moss growing, it is so easy to keep it growing. Another trick I did here was I just literally put a few heads in one at a time into like peat moss and just sort of let it grow. It's very thin. It's not sort of as dense as some. This pot here, for example, I planted it out the way that I just showed you. I made sure all the heads were facing up and pushed it into the ground, and it's done that to it so far. But other ones I just sort of put a few heads in and they still grow. It's just literally like taking one of these little heads here, and it's not going to focus. Literally taking that head there, and with a pair of tweezers finding like an open spot in the soil, like in the middle of that one that I just repotted, and literally with tweezers just like pressing it in about halfway or 3/4 of the way, and then it will start to grow from there, and it wicks water up. So that is one of the, once I realized that part, it was so much easier to grow this stuff. Now in the summertime it is much harder. If you leave it for a couple days, it sorry, you were all out of focus. If you leave it for a couple days, it kind of goes bad on you. In the summertime, my moss outside gets automatic sprinklers to water it once to twice a day, depending on how hot it is. Excuse me. And yeah, it sits in the shade. In the spring and in the fall, I move it back out into the sun. But as soon as that heat, or the sun has enough heat to be really drying, it's really dangerous to sphagnum moss. But yeah, I like the way it grows. This is like growing up and over, and there's pots in there, and the pictures get buried, and you're out of focus again. Stay in focus, damn you. And yeah, the plants just love it. So anyways, don't get discouraged if you're not having any luck growing it. It is so much harder to grow than people think it is. It's much harder to grow, I think, than the Nepenthes himself. I've killed so much sphagnum moss, it's crazy. And you just got a lesson learned, and summertime, don't let it dry out is the big one. So anyways, I hope you liked this video, and if you want to see more videos like this, make sure you subscribe to my channel. Again, I apologize for not doing a video last week. I was just too sick to even talk. So anyways, thanks for watching, guys.